Hey everyone, and welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to be virtually exploring the Gumbo Limbo Trail
How cool.
in Everglades National Park. And for this one, we've got some great sources.
Oh,
We've got National Park Service websites, we've got All Trails reviews,
awesome.
and of course we've got some background from Florida hikes.
This trail is so interesting because it gives us a glimpse into this very specific Everglades ecosystem,
Yeah.
the tropical hardwood hammock.
Yeah, I was looking at some All Trails reviews, and there were some really good descriptions. Someone said it was like a canopied forest garden,
Wow.
and someone else mentioned seeing royal palms, and even those Ligas tree snails.
Yeah.
So it sounds very lush and almost jungle-like.
It really is. Now, when we say hammock in the Everglades, we're not talking about the kind you relax in.
Right.
These hammocks are areas of dry ground that are a little bit elevated, and they're packed with these hardwood trees, and they're super important because they provide a refuge for a ton of life, especially when you consider that a lot of the Everglades is covered by water. Right.
You've got your freshwater sloughs and your marl prairies.
So these hammocks are like islands
Yeah.
of biodiversity
Yeah.
within this huge wetland. And the National Park Service describes the Gumbo Limbo Trail as a 0.4-mile paved loop,
Nice.
which makes it pretty accessible for a lot of people. And it seems like there's just a huge variety of plants. Gumbo limbo trees, obviously.
Of course.
Royal palms, strangler figs. They even mentioned wild coffee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, wild coffee plants.
And speaking of those strangler figs, they've got this crazy adaptation to this environment. They actually start their life high up in a tree canopy,
Oh.
growing roots down to the ground. And
Yeah.
over time, they can completely encircle the host tree, sometimes even engulfing it completely.
That is intense. I was also reading in the All Trails reviews that people found the trail surprisingly peaceful, even with other people around.
Really?
Yeah, I guess with that dense canopy, it kind of creates a sense of seclusion.
One hiker called it a beautiful lush of greenery. And that makes me think that it must feel really immersive, even though it's a short trail.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting to note that this trail is near a pond.
Yeah.
And you might even see an alligator or two.
Ooh, I hope we see some alligators, because I know they play a big role in this ecosystem.
They do. They dig these holes called alligator holes. And those become so crucial as a refuge for all sorts of aquatic life. During the dry season, it's like they're creating little oases.
Wow, that's amazing. But of course, we can't forget that this is a wild subtropical environment. A couple of the All Trails reviews mentioned mosquitoes and even poison ivy.
Very true. It's a good reminder that
Right.
even on the short paved trail, we're still venturing into nature's domain.
So we have this incredible hardwood hammock surrounded by these sloughs and prairies, and then these alligators shaping the landscape. Everything's connected. What can this seemingly small trail tell us about the Everglades as a whole?
That's a great question, and I think we can find some answers. By taking a closer look at some of these unique features, let's start with those alligator holes, because they are a fantastic example of how one species can have this ripple effect on the entire ecosystem. These alligator holes, they act as what ecologists call ecological stepping stones, especially during those dry periods. So they provide a refuge, for fish, amphibians, even wading birds.
Yeah.
That concentration of life attracts other predators, and you get this ripple effect of biodiversity.
So it's not just about the alligators themselves, it's about the way they create these little hubs of activity that benefit a whole range of species.
Exactly, and it kind of highlights this resilience of the Everglades ecosystem. Despite the challenges it faces, those fluctuating water levels and even fires, life finds a way.
Yeah, life finds a way to adapt and thrive.
Right.
Which brings up another point I wanted to touch on, the impact of human actions on the Everglades. We've diverted water, introduced invasive species, and that's had a huge impact on this delicate balance.
Oh, absolutely. You're right. And so there's this plan called the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, or SERP, that's trying to address some of that damage. It's this huge project. And the idea is to restore the natural flow of water through the Everglades, which is super crucial for the health of the whole system.
I've read about that. It sounds incredibly complex.
Ah.
Trying to balance those needs of the environment
Oh,
with the demands of a growing population.
it is. It's so complex. SERP involves capturing
Yeah.
and storing fresh water, removing barriers like canals and levees, and even creating artificial wetlands to filter pollutants.
Right.
It's a multi-billion-dollar, multi-decade effort, and it's definitely sparked a lot of debate.
It is encouraging, though, that there seems to be this growing awareness
Wow.
of how important the Everglades are, not just for their beauty, but for, the vital role they play in our own well-being.
I completely agree. That awareness is so crucial. And it's being fueled by the efforts of scientists, conservationists, and everyday people who are so passionate about protecting this unique ecosystem.
Yeah, like Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. She was such a powerful advocate for the Everglades.
Oh, yeah.
And her book, The Everglades River of Grass,
Yeah.
really helped to open people's eyes to this amazing place.
She was a true champion for the Everglades. And her work continues to inspire people to fight for the future of this vital ecosystem.
It is inspiring to think about those individuals who made such a difference. And it also makes me think about all those people who left reviews on all trails about the Gumbo Limbo Trail. And it's amazing how just like a simple hike can spark a connection to nature
Yeah.
and maybe even inspire someone to learn more about the Everglades or even get involved in conservation efforts.
You've hit on something really important there. Those personal experiences can be so powerful. They give people this chance to see the beauty and wonder of the Everglades firsthand. And that hopefully leads to a desire to protect it.
It's like we're all taking this virtual hike together. Speaking of our virtual hike, it sounds like we're nearing the end of the Gumbo Limbo Trail.
They are, but our exploration of the Everglades is far from over.
I feel like we've only scratched the surface here
Yeah.
of what makes the Gumbo Limbo Trail and the Everglades as a whole so fascinating.
It really shows you just how much nature can adapt and thrive, even in places that seem challenging.
And for anyone listening who might be
Yeah.
inspired to see it for themselves. I mean, if you're ever in South Florida, maybe a trip to Everglades National Park is in order.
Definitely.
But even if you can't visit in person, there are still so many ways to dive deeper into this world. We've talked about alligators and strangler figs, but there are so many other incredible species and relationships to discover.
You could learn about the history of the Everglades, like the indigenous people who lived there for centuries.
Right?
Or you could check out the restoration efforts and how complex it is to try to balance human needs with conservation.
So many different paths you could take to keep learning.
And as you keep learning, keep in mind that we tend to think about these wild places as being separate from us, but we're all connected to them.
That's so true, in ways we don't even realize.
It's like the air we breathe, the water we drink, the climate we rely on. Our planet's health depends on the health of places, like the Everglades.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Gumbo Limbo Trail, let this experience spark your curiosity. Keep learning, asking questions, and think about how you can play a part in protecting these places for future generations.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us today on this adventure into the Everglades. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.